So slightly different topics now. Does the grant allow for admin costs?
That's perfectly fine. You can include admin costs. It has to be, whatever it is that's being carried out, it has to be one of those eligible activities, so keep that in mind.
And, oh, I'm bad at managing this question list. Can funds be used to pay for attending an HSBC, NEH, and vendor training conferences?
Historically, all of that has been HUD approved, so yes, and that's the caveat there, that it's HUD approved. So if you, let's say you find at your local university there is a data analysis course that you think would be really helpful to take and build the skills of the HMIS staff, or even COC data leadership folks, then when you are doing your budget and project proposal, you can include that to be approved by HUD. And then, yes, you certainly could then use the funds to do that.
So if somebody's a lead agency for 3 COCs that already have a consolidated HMIS, would they submit 3 separate applications on behalf of those COCs, or would they submit a single application or single NOFA application?
Yeah. So if you're already consolidated, you can. It always can. Subawards are allowed. That can happen. So if it's one HMIS lead that wants to be the one that makes the application, then that should be fine.
So there are, let's see, I'm not sure you'll be able to answer this one, Anna, but I mean, Fran, let's give it a shot. Anna asks if they're on the high needs list. They have a suspicion as to what that reason is that they're on the high needs list. And it's about privately funded shelters not entering exit destination for a lot of their clients. So the idea that hiring staff to enter that data would solve that doesn't really resonate with them. Do you have any other suggestions for how to use these funds to tackle that kind of problem? I'm on the high needs list. I kind of suspect what it would be. I don't think more staff would solve the problem. What could? Sounds like a TA question.
Yeah, it really is. It is a TA question. I would definitely submit that for technical assistance, because you're really trying to come up with a strategy that's going to work, and it will probably be very particular to your community and what are the barriers that you're experiencing with those individuals that are not wanting to enter in that information that's causing that issue.
So we'll make sure to put the link for requesting TA into the answer in just a sec. I'm going to go through. And do we have any more slides? I don't think so, right, Fran? So we're like firmly in the Q&A section of this show.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this is a good one, and I've seen the answer before, so you can probably summarize it better than me. If we have 10 COCs already consolidated, so we'd be applying for one of the other categories of the eligible activities, not the consolidation, obviously. But when completing the phase 1 application, do they respond to the questions based on aggregate or average data, the highest need COC, the lowest need COC, or something else?
That's that's a good question. And so on the rating factor 1, you're going to use the lowest capacity one. So figure out whoever's the lowest capacity, and that's what you're going to respond to there. And then if you were doing a consolidation, then when you go to rating factor 3, then you would use the highest performing.
Okay. Could this money be used to do things like data dashboards or tools for HMIS that are outside their actual HMIS implementation, like third-party software and other tools like that?
Okay, so read that to me one more time.
Sure. No, we're not in the consolidation category right now, just in the improving data quality category. Could that be, and I think the answer is yes, because you can subcontract, but can you purchase third-party software like Tableau or some of these other things that are happening in communities to increase data quality, data reporting?
Yeah, I mean, if you're submitting something to improve data quality and that is something that would be effective for data quality, I mean, that's an example. So, yeah, I mean, the big thing is that this funding is not, just like with regular HMIS funding, it's not meant to actually develop software. So you want to stay away from that. But if it's really to improve what you guys are doing around the data to make sure that you can use it for decisions in your community, then you know, I think that you find the eligible activity that makes the most sense and then submit the NOFA based on that.
Okay. Do we use the HIC or the AHAR for bed coverage information? That's a good question.
I think you're using the HIC, but that's something I'll need to confirm. So we can make sure that you guys have that information.
It'd be good for some of these, if you feel, just to reiterate, if you feel like you don't have a clear answer or we've asked you to submit an AAQ to get that answer, make sure you do that. And we will have a list of the questions after this call and try and put together an FAQ shortly thereafter for you to reference. But if you feel like you need to get a question in front of us that needs more clarity or that we didn't quite answer right or clearly, please submit an HMIS AAQ. So I'm going to continue to read through these. I'm kind of all caught up, right, on copying and pasting over some questions for you. Fran, based on your presentation, we're just in the Q&A part of this, so if you want to look and pull any out that look interesting to answer to verbally, that would be great.
Okay.
So you're not, yeah, now we're going to talk about, sorry. So Ben asked are you required to be on the high need community list in order to get funding to improve data quality? So the Appendix A list is, for consolidation. Every category is available for anyone to apply for, even if you're not on the Appendix A high need list.
Yeah, if you're not on that list, but you know that you have some serious issue that could be addressed with this funding and would really help your community have a stronger HMIS and help your community really leverage the information that's coming from that, then yes, don't let that list shy you away from actually applying. You just need to be really clear about what that need is and what the activity that you're going to be engaging in is.
And we still have, folks wanting some clarification to, the difference between I'm consolidated, separate HMIS leads, but we have one governance charter. Can we still consolidate to, improve the consolidation? Still a few more questions regarding being on the same software and whether that means, that keeps us from being consolidation. So I don't know if you want to try and put more words around that idea, Fran, the idea of consolidation.
Yeah.
And what HUD's intent here is.
Yeah, so there may be a community, and that community might have 4 or 5 COCs that are already what we would consider consolidated. They're all on the same HMIS instance. So they have the same vendor. They got together and worked out a governance charter, or maybe it was an MOU originally. So they all made agreements about what that system was going to look like, how privacy was going to be managed, how security was going to be managed. Everybody joined that same instance, and now maybe you have a couple other HMIS implementations in the area that would now like to join. So joining that it's considered a consolidation, even though you have a group that's already on. If you're bringing other COCs onto that implementation, it's a consolidation. So really think of it like you have, you have communities that have different, contracts with the vendor. Each one's different. They have different implementation, and they want to then consolidate those into a single thing. That's the big one. And I think what makes this so difficult, like I said earlier, is that it's very nuanced at the local level. Communities have kind of organically made decisions about what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And so we get, there's a huge variety of how these systems are structured. The key piece is, this is really about bringing up the capacity of an HMIS implementation. So do you have an HMIS implementation that's really struggling, most likely on this list, that could then work with another HMIS implementation, consolidate with it, and do better? Mary, do you have other thoughts on describing that?
No, it's tough. I think, no, I don't. I think it's if you think about HUD's goal is to build the capacity of kind of disparate, struggling COCs who are struggling to manage their own. I'm very much a contracts person, so I'm glad you said the word contracts. I feel able to now say, like, it feels like if you've got a bunch of contracts with, whether it's the same vendor or different vendors, but you're managing different contracts for that software, that implementation, kind of pooling your resources, bringing it all under the same governance, working through contractual issues together, and, being on the same platform or database, however you want to think about it, under the same contract. That's consolidation. That's building up your capacity and using your partners right nearby or across the state to help build some of that capacity.
And data's going to move, right? So if you're a separate HMIS, your data is going to move, and it's going to move into the HMIS that you're consolidating with, and it could move and be in like a little separate bucket, so there's no data disclosure, or it might end up, there might be some integration there. But you're going to see data moving, and that's why, again, there's a higher maximum for consolidation, because depending on how complex or how big the community is, how much data there is, the complexity of how the data is structured in the database, you really could potentially need quite a bit of funding to pull this off successfully. So you should see some data moving with the consolidation.
Fran, I know you told me before we started the call, but I've told a few people to submit an AAQ on this one. But maybe we do have the answer. Is this money eligible to help improve a comparable database? A few people have asked that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Keep in mind, the person that's eligible to apply for this funding is really like a collaborative applicant, UFA, HMIS lead agency. So first I would say a victim service provider, if they're not included in the list of those three things I just described, they're not going to be applying directly for this funding. So that's one piece. But it does not mean that you could not be doing something with a comparable database to improve the data quality that the COC is seeing. But the applicant still would be potentially the HMIS lead or collaborative applicant, and then it could be sub-awarded. So yes, there's potential. Also keep in mind that when you're receiving this money, if you've, and I'm going to flip back to this slide. Hopefully we don't get too dizzy as I factor here. But you know, I think this table is very helpful in part of this, in that you know, you need to make sure that when you're doing this stuff, that that you're coming out with something that's compliant. And as you know, comparable databases need to meet the same requirements as an HMIS. So we don't explicitly say this in the NOFA, but the expectation is that all these things are compliant. Okay,
I'm putting a few over in the presenter notes box. You can pick and choose, Fran.
Sure. So, so you can consolidate your HMIS, but not the COC. Absolutely. I mean, COCs can operate independently and still be using the same consolidated HMIS. So based on the information provided, there's 100 points possible. And so, yeah, so we've got a few questions around this. I'm not able to tell you necessarily whether you'd be competitive or not. There's so many variations to why that may or may not be the case. So we won't be responding as far as whether you're going to be competitive. What we can respond to is whether something would be an eligible activity or not an eligible activity. And we can provide you with kind of the scoring or rating structure that we're using so you can see that. But I can't answer directly whether you would be competitive or not. We're exploring submitting for a non-consolidation. Do we need to incorporate the bed coverage and other factors in rating factor 1 if not applying for a consolidation? Everybody will answer factor 1. Everybody, regardless whether you do an HMIS consolidation or not. And then, so I think this is rating factor 2. For the ratio of HMIS funding to users, does that include just the HUD or include other funding matching funds? I would say submit that to an AAQ. I would want to know a little bit more on that question. Jacqueline's asking, for clarification, an applicant may apply for HMIS improvement or HMIS consolidation, but not both. So this is a great question. So if you know you're going to do an HMIS consolidation, you would use that when you're looking at what you're responding to in the rating factors. So in that case, you're responding, yes, I want to do an HMIS consolidation. I'm responding to rating factor 1 and 3. Or no, I'm not, then I'm doing factor 1 and 2. However, you can choose to put in your application eligible activities under all 4 of those categories. So you could be doing an HMIS consolidation. You may, there may be a reason to do some software functionality stuff. You may be trying to address data quality, and you most certainly would want to include some training. So you could have all of that in there. It's not a kind of one or the other. You just need, the big thing is that when determining what parts that you're going to respond to in the application, it's based, it's kind of separated out on whether the HMIS consolidation is included or not included. But you can do as many of those eligible activities, as warranted given the need that you have in your community.
I'm not seeing any more questions roll in. I'll answer Jennifer's real fast in writing, but we did just put up the links to the HMIS NOFA Q&A slides that Fran walked through today. And there's a link to the actual capacity building project NOFA, which is a PDF you can download from the HUD Exchange website.
There's also I would also take a moment and say that you're doing this through grants.gov, and there's some tutorials on there. So if you have questions about using grants.gov, you can certainly submit that to us. You can also take a look at those tutorials. That might be helpful. Should we do a last call for questions?
The chat, somebody asked if the chat was available, and yes, last call for questions. We're going to put together an FAQ very soon. You'll see that here really, really soon, an FAQ that should cover pretty much everything that was asked during the chat. And then again, if you were asked to submit an HMIS FAQ or you feel like your question didn't really get an answer, you can not like the answer and still submit it if you want, but more about clarifying the answer you got. If you need to, feel free to submit an HMIS FAQ. Will the timeline be adjusted if the federal government gets shut down? Go for it, Fran.
I do not know. It depends on probably what that looks like. Yeah, we'll. If there is a change, we certainly will put out a notification about that.
The lead agency is 3 COCs that are already consolidated. They could submit a different application for each COC if they wanted to, right? But they can also submit as a single COC if they've already consolidated.
Right.
And then lower performing COC can be used. The HMIS can be used if you're moving to a new HMIS. That's a local kind of decision to make when you're filling out your application, right? Decide what you're going to do locally with whose HMIS gets used.
There's not a restriction on it. Yeah, it's locally determined. If you're, okay. So you may answer the money question.
Yeah, sure.
So
it's a good question.
It is. So if it's already consolidated, right? If there's already a consolidation, so you're not applying to do a consolidation. Regardless whether it's let's say an HMIS system administrator that's submitting an application for 3 COCs or 1 COC, the maximum is going to be the $150,000. It's really that 400,000 maximum is for those that are applying for the HMIS consolidation activities.
All right.
Excellent. I want to thank everybody for joining today. Hopefully this was really helpful. As Mary said, we're going to be putting out FAQ for you so you have some of these responses. And also, please submit an AAQ or an email, and we'll try to get to those fairly quickly. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Fran.
Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.